GOP primary is concerned right now with one question. Did George W. Bush actually keep us safe while he was president, particularly on 9/11? Now, nobody seems interested in actually asking George W. about it, but Jeb is hanging around, and so Donald Trump has been bringing up repeatedly over the past few days the idea that you cannot say that we were safe when more than 3,000 people lost their lives in the worst act of terrorism in American history. Here is one of those times when he stated this case against George W.
I think I have a bigger heart than all of them. I think I'm much more competent than all of them. When you talk about George Bush, I mean, say what you want. The World Trade Center came down during his time. If you look
Hold
at
on,
Sandy Hook,
you can't blame George Bush for that.
He was president, okay? Don't blame him or don't blame him, but he was president. The World Trade Center came down during his reign.
Okay, two things first before we get to the heart of this disagreement. Number one, Trump is unbelievable. He now claims he has literally a bigger heart than his mind is bigger, his pocketbook is bigger, his heart is bigger. It's so big it'll make your head spin.
Yeah.
Who says that with a straight face?
Yeah, your head spins because of all the extra blood your gigantic heart is pumping out.
I mean, can you imagine you walk into a room at a dinner party and you go around the room and go, my heart is bigger than your hearts.
Yeah.
I have the biggest heart in this room.
Well, but he should say things like that because every one of his stupid bragging things that he's done up until this point have worked. People are not turned off by simply saying, "I have lots of money." Oh, did you know that I'm rich? Did you know I'm rich? I have so much money, and people are like, "Oh my God, yes, this is amazing." Well, then fine. I've got a huge spleen. My kidneys they're like gigantic boulders of kidneys. Why not? You become president that way, apparently.
By the way, if his organs are really that large, he ought to go to a doctor. He might have an issue.
Exactly.
Okay.
I think he's got a problem.
Okay, now on to the important stuff.
Yes.
Look at the media reporter there, mainstream media. Media like, you can't blame Bush for that.
Yeah.
Well, wait a minute, 9/11 did happen on his watch. That's a fact, right?
Yeah.
I know they like to do historical revision, which they're about to do in a little bit. They're going to blame it on Clinton, who was not in office.
Yes.
And he was in office, it's not for like 9 days, for like 9 months.
Yeah.
Okay, and as we're going to show you, he had documents saying they're going to attack.
Yeah.
But the mainstream reporter reflexively. Now do they do that for to protect Hillary Clinton or Barack Obama? You can't blame that on Obama. They would never say that. Liberal bias, right? Yeah. Instead, they do have a conservative bias. You can't say that about Bush. Shh, never say that it was Bush's fault.
And I'm glad that you pointed that out because that was him talking with Bloomberg. But a little bit later on, when we show Fox and Friends, you're going to see the exact same thing. And so a huge. I mean, Bloomberg's not like exactly a lib outfit, but you have a diversity of areas where this is happening, where they feel the need to defend him in a way that I can't imagine on any other issue. And really, look, Trump, for once, got a foreign policy fact right. It's the first thing he's actually said that has been accurate. It did happen under George W. Bush. Don't yell at him. He'll never get anything right again in the future. But anyway, so as I said, this has been brought up to Jeb Bush quite a lot. He is going to be quite vociferous in his defense of his brother. We've got 2 clips on that. Here is the first.
Look, my brother responded to a crisis, and he did it as you would hope a president would do. He united the country, he organized our country, and he kept us safe. And there's no denying that. The great majority of Americans believe that, and I don't know why he keeps bringing this up. Next week, Mr. Trump is probably going to say that FDR was around when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor. It's what you do after that matters, and that's the sign of leadership. Does anybody actually blame my brother for the attacks on 9/11? If they do, they're totally marginalized in our society. It's what he did afterwards that mattered, and I'm proud of him, and so are a bunch of other people. You don't have to have your last name named Bush to be able to understand that.
What do you do after that matters?
Okay, so first of all, he said he kept us safe. No, we're having the conversation because by definition he didn't. 9/11 happened under his watch. We lost nearly 3,000 Americans. He didn't keep us safe. That's the whole point of the conversation, right? Does anyone really disagree about that? If they don't agree on that, he said, they have been marginalized. Well, that part is true.
They have been.
They have been marginalized. It's not because they're not correct. They're obviously correct, right? It's because the press up until now has done a great job of marginalizing anyone who dared to disagree. So why are we having this conversation? This conversation is verboten, okay? We forbid it a long time ago. And then, of course, the comical, it's what you do after. Okay, wait. So the president should never try to prevent anything. Okay, he should only react afterwards and go, oh my God, what, something happened? Oh, I'm panicking. Okay, let's react, right? if Obama dared to say, I don't care about what happens, I don't care if we get
What happens
attacked.
after.
All I'm going to do is react after we get attacked.
Well, you
He
can't,
would be pulverized.
you can't prevent the act because then you won't have anything to respond to and to be presidential. What matters is what you do after. After the terrorist attack that you didn't prepare for, you stand on the rubble with a bullhorn. After you do nothing in the obvious situation of Katrina, where people are losing their lives and the city is being destroyed, then you fly over it. After the economy is destroyed, you go and you paint pictures of dogs. That's what's important, what you do after you destroy various parts of America.
That's Jeb Bush admitting right there, hey, I'm not going to do anything proactive at all. I'm not going to keep you safe. But if there is an attack, afterwards, I'm going to grab that same bullhorn.
Yeah.
Okay, woof. Afterwards, we'll really get to it. Now, that's not what the president's supposed to be doing. It is a piss-poor excuse.
Totally.
Based on trying to protect your brother and apparently protect yourself because you're going to do the same exact thing.
Exactly. Now, we've been talking about how they would not protect other people in the same way. Well, Jake Tapper's going to do something like that in this next clip where he draws a comparison between Jeb Bush, protecting his brother in the case of 9/11, but attacking Hillary Clinton for her alleged actions or lack of action with Benghazi.
Obviously, Al-Qaeda was responsible for the terrorist attack of 9/11. But how do you respond to critics who ask, if your brother and his administration bear no responsibility at all, how do you then make the jump that President Obama and Secretary Clinton are responsible for what happened at Benghazi?
Well, it's the question on Benghazi, which is hopefully will now finally get the truth to, is was the place secure? They had a responsibility in the Department of State to have proper security.
Well, that's kind of proving the point of the critics I was just asking about, because you don't want to have your brother bear responsibility for 9/11, and I understand that argument, and Al-Qaeda is responsible, but why are the terrorists not the ones who are responsible for these attacks in Libya?
They are. Of course they are, but if the ambassador was asking for additional security and didn't get it, that's a proper point.
That's an important point.
Okay.
We should have asked before 9/11 for more security. There should have been warnings. Why didn't we do that? Oh, wait, we did do that. Why don't we actually look at that?
Yeah, so let's just be clear here. He's saying if only there was prior warning, then maybe you take action ahead of time.
Why
Let's
didn't
see.
we?
All right, before 9/11, I'm sure there wasn't, John, was there?
No. We looked and we only found this. Exactly what we were looking for. Bin Laden determined to strike in us. But who's us?
I believe
What do you make of this document? It could mean anything.
So this is the document that George W. Bush got before bin Laden actually did strike in the United States. And it told him, he's coming, be careful. This is your intelligence agency telling you he is going to attack inside the United States.
Yes.
Now, John, I'm sure that George Bush took that very seriously because, boy, if he had intelligence ahead of time, he would act upon it, right?
Well, he did act upon it. It was odd, though, the way that he prepared us. He went fishing afterward. But before he went on his fishing trip, he apparently said this. After listening to the briefer, Bush reportedly replied, "All right, you've covered your ass now."
Oh, my God. Okay, so think about that. So, according to Jeb Bush's philosophy, you can't do anything ahead of time. You could only react afterwards. But if there was a situation where you could react ahead of time, only if you have intelligence telling you, hey, you should make things safer. Here we have intelligence telling George W. Bush, they're coming, they're going to attack us.
Yeah.
And he said, you cover your ass, go home. Because he was busy in Crawford. He was there for a month before the attacks, on vacation. They say, 9 months, it's not fair to George W. Bush to say that it happened on his watch because his administration had just gotten started. By the way, 9 months into Obama's administration, if we had had a terrible terrorist attack, you think they give him a pass on that one?
They blame him for the economy, which fell apart before he became president.
But one of the 9 months for George W. Bush was him on vacation in Crawford as his intelligence agents are telling him, get back to work! They're going to attack us! They're going to attack us!
Yeah.
And Bush did nothing. If you can't blame a president for that, what can you blame a president for? It is the most epic failure in U.S. foreign policy history to have the warning and to do nothing about it.
I would say second to the decision to invade Iraq, but by the same guy. Yeah, and you can't say that he hadn't been president for long enough. He apparently thought that he had been president long enough that he deserved a month-long vacation. And the amount of time, 9 months, a human body can be developed inside of a person and birthed into the world in 9 months. He can't read and respond to a memo. You didn't make time for that. You're the president. And this is why someone like Trump becoming president is so scary. Because George W. Bush did nothing for the first 9 months. Trump apparently isn't even going to start studying until he becomes president. What's the grace period for Trump if he becomes president?
So there are no winners in this story. Trump is an ass who says, I don't even know foreign policy until I get, and I'll figure it out when I get in office. But my giant head and giant heart will help me to do that.
Yes.
And it'll make your tiny head spin. How good I'll be at it. Jeb Bush is saying, I'm not going to do shit to prepare for any attack.
Yeah.
And if it happens afterwards, I'll invade random Middle Eastern countries just like my dad did. I'm sorry. His dad was less random, like his brother did. His dad's attack against Middle Eastern countries is a little bit more justifiable.
A little bit more, yeah.
Right.
And a little bit more limited, thankfully.
Yes.
Yes.
So this is your alternatives on the Republican side. This is the fight they're having about who's going to be worse in terms of foreign policy,
Yeah.
and what debacles will lead out of it.